Good evening. Supporters of the high-speed railway HS2 will warn at a major conference tomorrow that there will be serious consequences if the project is scrapped. They'll claim that our existing lines will clog up and Britain's economy will be damaged.
But along the planned routes between London and the Midlands and the North, opponents say it will destroy the countryside and hit the tourist industry. In a moment, we'll be speaking to the head of environment at HS2 Limited, Peter Miller. And in the first of two special reports, our transport correspondent Keith Wilkinson has taken to the air to look at the impact it could have on some of our most picturesque districts.
It's home to some of England's historic gems, like this Grade 1 16th century gatehouse where Mary, Queen of Scots, was held prisoner. Like Shugborough Hall and its spectacular grounds and parkland, an attraction that draws visitors from all over the world. They overlook the valley of the River Trent near Great Haywood in Staffordshire, spanned here by the longest packhorse bridge in England, just one of many picturesque rural areas destined to be cut through by the high-speed railway HS2. In this case, the second phase section from Birmingham to Manchester.
One of the UK's biggest earners is tourism, said to be worth well over £100 billion to the economy. And one of the main reasons why people come here is right below us. Historic buildings, country walks, canals, rivers.
There are 34,000 boats on our canal network. They're used by almost 6 million boaters a year. And at Great Haywood is one of the most popular junctions. This new marina has 200 berths. They'd like to expand, but the route of HS2 is to be built right alongside on a gigantic concrete viaduct and embankment straight across the canal and the Trent floodplain. On the other side of the valley, it will slice right through the golf course at Ingestry.
Well, if it happens to go ahead, then it will decimate the course completely. We'll cut it completely in half and ruin the course as it stands. It starts off going through the 18th hole, through the 10th, the 11th, up the side of the 14th, to the 7th, 5th and the 4th, and it completely decimates the 4th.
Close to that golf course and in earshot of the line, one of England's finest Jacobean mansions, now used by Sandwell Council for children's residential courses. Next to it, a church designed by Sir Christopher Wren. Also close to the line, this quiet hamlet, whose residents once included David Cameron, who lived here. Michael Woodhouse built this water wheel in his garden so he could enjoy his retirement listening to the trickle of water. He fears that retirement will be anything but peaceful, especially once the construction lorries roll in.
Well, it's a beautiful rural setting. It's been well looked after and maintained for all these years. It's got a history that goes back to the Doomsday book, and now we have a different Doomsday approaching, and everybody in the village is absolutely devastated.
A mile or so north, and the route demolishes a number of farms, including this one, built in 1830. The line will cut in half the 200 acres used to grow crops and graze sheep. Beyond here, the 80-acre Staffordshire County Showground. The high-speed train will travel straight through this section in a deep cutting. Currently, this part of the route hosts Europe's biggest show jumping event, with 1,500 horses. The showground holds 165 events a year, pulling in 485,000 visitors and earning many millions of pounds for the economy of Staffordshire. The future is now uncertain, and they're trying here, at the very least, to get the route enclosed in a tunnel. Although HS2 will run some distance from Shugborough and the Tixall Gatehouse, it will be close to this historic pavilion, and the Landmark Trust, which rescues buildings like this, is worried about the impact. And many visitors and locals we spoke to said they felt it would spoil the wider area as a tourist destination.
I think that if there was a high-speed link coming very close to a property like this landmark property here, then it would be very difficult to think of it as a beautiful and peaceful location.
Would you come here if there was a high-speed railway about a mile away?
I don't think so, because you would spoil the views completely across these fields and over the valley. It would just look absolutely awful.
We're seeing this thing coming through 50, 60 feet high on railway embankments and on viaducts, and very, very noisy, and the whole of industry is blighted. This thing does not stop in Staffordshire. It tears a massive gap and scar right the way through properties.
Supporters of HS2 say, far from destroying tourism, it will bring in even more visitors, especially from Europe, and it will help them get around the country. Much of the landscape, they say, will be protected with cuttings, tunnels and tree planting. But many of those who enjoy this bit of the countryside will take a lot of convincing. Keith Wilkinson, ITV News.
Well, joining us for more on this is Peter Miller, who's Head of Environment at HS2 Limited. Mr. Miller, we've seen there the extensive potential damage that we could have to the countryside. And even now, the Agricultural Minister, David Heath, used the phrase, "you can't grow old trees." He was referring to his concern about the ancient woodlands. What's your response to that?
I think where we are today is we're at the point of consulting on the line of route for phase 2, and my team have undertaken an extensive bit of work to get to this point, and we've endeavoured to keep the railway away from places where people live, the environmental features along the line of route, ancient woodlands and so forth, and many of the historic features that are featured in your piece to date. That's not the end of it. We are through this consultation. We want to talk with local people, businesses and so forth, to understand what their concerns are and to see whether we can address those, whether we can move the route a little bit, whether we can put in landscaping, planting, noise barriers and this sort of thing to help alleviate those sorts of effects that are of concern to your viewers.
Yeah, you can see this is boiling up though to be probably the biggest environmental issue ever. I mean, can you honestly win the arguments?
I think if you consider the amount of capacity which we're going to get out of this railway and the release capacity which will accrue from the existing railway as a result of HS2, I think you'll understand that we are doing that within a very narrow corridor. A railway generally takes up very little land. If we were to do a similar sort of thing with a motorway, it would be double the amount of land. So railways are very efficient and very effective from an environmental perspective. Now, I worked on High Speed 1 and a lot the Channel Tunnel Rail Link, and many of these sorts of concerns came to the fore on that particular project. And what we've been trying to do is keep the railway low in the environment, build up the ground alongside to hide it and screen it and provide planting. And we think that will be effective.
Thank you for your contribution today. Thank you.
Thank you. And tomorrow night, we'll hear from supporters of HS2 who say it will be vital for our economic future. Keith Wilkinson will be back in the air looking at how the high-speed line will affect the M42 corridor heading through Leicestershire and towards Nottingham.